Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namah Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirbhishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna Hare
Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajapacharya Stotravasta Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Raj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Sridhar Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath, Sham Kund Radha Kunigiri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much for that wonderful kirtan, Ekendra Prabhu. So nice. This is life. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurn Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Dadhati Shapadhatika Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deen Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Bhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome to all, especially welcome to Apurva Prabhu and Kamalini. So grateful that you're here. And I wonder what sort of questions or topics might be bubbling up tonight.
Until other questions bubble up, Maharaj, I had one that I've been percolating for a while. It's an ISKCON history question. It has to do with the publication of teachings of Lord Chaitanya. That we started reading it with another family recently, maybe for the first time in a very long time. And one of the first things we noticed as we were reading it was that the prose that Prabhupada used in that book seemed to have a slightly different flavor than some that we've heard from his other books. And I was wondering how that book was actually produced. Was it something that Prabhupada put together similar to how he produced Krishna book, like wanting to have a summary study of all his teachings in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, or was it produced some other way?
Well, first let me say that Teachings of Lord Chaitanya was produced just before I joined. It was published after I joined, but it was produced a little before. Now, let's see what I know about it. First of all, of course, Srila Prabhupada typed it. It wasn't dictation like Krishna book. He hadn't yet acquired or been given that dictating machine. So it was typing. And Prabhupada's written work tends to be different from his dictated work, as we find that when people speak and when people write, the process is somewhat different. So Prabhupada's written prose is more, say, a little more sophisticated than his spoken word. So that's one thing. It wasn't put together from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya Charitamrita he hadn't written yet, although he'd done 5 or 6 chapters in India. He'd published part of it in his Back to Godhead, but TLC wasn't compiled from that work. The only part that was a compilation was the preface or introduction, I think introduction, which as stated in the book was compiled from lectures that Prabhupada gave at 26 2nd Avenue. Srila Prabhupada, of course, it's interesting to see his choice of chapters. He's really taking instructive chapters. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu meeting with Prakashananda Saraswati, with Rupa Goswami, with Sanatana Goswami, with Ramananda Roy. So very significant teachings are there. He could have done, what would you say, more Leela-oriented, a more Leela-oriented book, but it's quite strong on teachings. My sense also is that in the beginning, perhaps Srila Prabhupada, this is just me, but you can see if this, I think in the beginning, Srila Prabhupada had sort of a higher estimation of what topics he could speak on to his audience. And I think after some time, it sort of came down to more less lofty topics. Of course, Prabhupada, throughout, he's always speaking the basic principles of Krishna consciousness, and throughout, he's always speaking about the ultimate goal of Krishna consciousness. So it's not fundamentally different. Just my sense is that perhaps he expected that the audience might be able to reach topics that he later thought perhaps they, or a level of understanding that perhaps he thought they might not so easily reach later. That's all my speculation and my sense of it, but I wouldn't carry that too far, because really what Prabhupada presents in TLC and what he presents in, say, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, teachings are the same subject, and CC is certainly not any less lofty than Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So perhaps I should retract all of my previous speculations. The book was edited by Ray Ramadas, who was one of the early devotees and early editor of Back to Godhead magazine. And later, Ray Rama later left the society, and Hayagriva asked if he could re-edit the book, basically for English, what would you say, fluency or something like that. And Prabhupada gave his permission. But on review, after Prabhupada left, Jayadvaita Prabhu and others found that something had been, although some improvements had been made, there was also a loss in that the Hayagriva's editing lost some of the flavor of things Srila Prabhupada said, and also wasn't always quite right about content, although generally it was quite good. So then Jayadvaita went back and restored some of the things from the earlier edition. So the present edition is a little bit of a mixture of Hayagriva's improvements and Ray Rama's fidelity, I would say, to Prabhupada's teachings and his word. And it came out, I think it was published in 1968, which is the year I joined. Is that okay? Is there something more
No, thank you very much. It was just as we were reading through it, I noticed that in some of the later chapters there were some passages, it seems, from the purport to the Srimad Bhagavatam 111 that were almost identical to how the text appears in the Bhagavatam.
Well, Prabhupada would sometimes do that. He would, you'll find in CC or elsewhere that he'll just say, insert such and such from such and such place. The whole purport to, in Bhagavad Gita, to Namam Duskritana Mudha is inserted from an old Back to Godhead article that he wrote while in India. So Prabhupada would pick things up that he'd done earlier and you know, rather than do the whole thing, he'd say insert such and such. Yes. Well, I'm thinking of it, just something surrounding teachings of Lord Chaitanya. When the cover jacket was designed, somehow there was Prabhupada's name, then there was the title. Prabhupada corrected. He said, "No, it's not right for my name to be above teachings of Lord Chaitanya." So he had his name shifted to the bottom of the cover. He also appreciated there's a publisher's dedication that was written by Ramananda Prabhu, who organized the production of the book in Japan by Nippon Printing Company. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Apurva Prabhu. Yeah, we need you to unmute. Alt A will do it. There you are.
Thank you. So, since Lord Chaitanya is actually in the mood of Srimati Radharani, why was he especially fond of hearing about Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj like that? Just shed some light on that.
Why, if he is in the mood of Radharani, was he so eager to hear about Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj? Well, what could I say about that? First thing is that the mood of Srimati Radharani is pure devotional service. So that's manifest in the pastimes of Dhruva, the pastimes of Prahlad, not only in the Madhurya Lila with the gopis, but it's there in Prahlad, in Dhruva. Yes, so that's one thought. Another is that he's in the internally he's in the mood of Srimati Radharani, but externally he's in the mood of a teacher. He's in the mood of an acharya. So to teach us, he doesn't just jump into Ras Lila and talk about all those things, but he sets the example of relishing the Prahlad Charitra and Dhruva Charitra, the activities, the character of Prahlad and Dhruva Maharaj.
Nice.
And we need to learn that also. There's that famous, where our tendency sometimes is to go for the good stuff, the juicy old Madhurya Lila. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, who's in the mood of Srimati Radharani, is setting the example, hearing about Dhruva Maharaj, hearing about Prahlad Maharaj, eager to discuss those topics.
Thank you. Okay. That sounds good.
Okay. Thank you. Seema has her hand up.
Pranam Maharaj. Maharaj, there's something that I'm finding very difficult to understand. Perhaps you can clarify. It's about something from the Mahabharata. We know very clearly Vaishnava Aparadh is so devastating to spiritual life. And you can never be dear to Krishna if you're committing Vaishnava Aparadh. But in the Mahabharata, we know Duryodhana, his activities are so heinous. I mean, what to speak of poisoning Bhima while they were children, to trying to kill the entire Pandava family. I mean, these are close associates of Lord Krishna. He was just so evil. His every thought was to cause harm to the Pandavas. And yet we find that Lord Balaram, who is the first expansion of Lord Krishna, that he was somewhat seemingly affectionate towards Duryodhana, up to the point of accepting his invite to dine with him, to teach him Gada Yudh, even as far as to consider him as someone that could be qualified to marry his sister, Subhadra Devi. It's just so baffling, because we know Krishna rejected an invite to dine with Duryodhana. Somebody who's committing offense after offense is so evil. His every thought is to cause harm to the Pandavas. It's hard for me to understand how Lord Balarama could seemingly seem to be fond of Duryodhana.
Not seemingly, he was.
I didn't want to go there in case.
Just to puzzle our brains. The Supreme Personality of Godhead does these things. Just to create some taste. There's this, what would you say? This taste that's created from opposition. That if everything's always in total agreement, total harmony, then life gets boring. There has to be some disagreement. Just like Krishna, Rukmini is so submissive, so gentle, so willing to go along with whatever Krishna may desire, that Krishna desires to create some, what would you say, some upheaval in the relationship. He creates some disturbance just to enjoy a taste. When there's a taste, when husband and wife always get along, marriage gets boring. There have to be some arguments, some quarrels, some I'll never speak to you again. Then somehow they have to overcome these things. Then that creates an extra taste in the relationship. So this relationship is there between Krishna and Balaram also, that there's some opposition. Although Balaram is completely in the mood of service to Krishna, there's some opposition there also. But Krishna disagrees with himself. Krishna and Balaram are the same personality of Godhead, but he expands in two as Krishna and Balaram. And sometimes as Balaram, he disagrees with Krishna, or he chastises Krishna, or he favors, as you said, the opposite party. So these are Krishna's pastimes, just to enjoy some special taste. That's as much as I can understand. Maybe someone can add something more.
Ekendra says he has something to say.
Ekendra has something to say.
I've been thinking about this, Maharaj, and I was just thinking about it in terms of Kshatriya social dynamics. That, Prabhupada would say things like the Kshatriyas are very stern people. And that, for example, Bhishma took the side of Duryodhana, even though he was such a great devotee, just because he was obliged to, due to financial and dharmic considerations, he was duty bound to protect the throne. So that led me to think how Duryodhana had such enmity against Bhima, and his whole life probably thinking how to kill him. And this is my social philosophical speculation. He may have thought, and I've not read this, but he may have thought, let me approach Lord Balaram, the most powerful club fighter ever, and let me seek his blessings. And he may have done that very thing and actually earned the mercy of Lord Balaram just because he became a submissive student.
Yeah, that's another name of Lord Balaram, Duryodhana Guru. He's the spiritual master of Duryodhana. Well, the spiritual master is naturally affectionate to the disciple. Even sometimes we see this disciple as a bit of a rogue, but the spiritual master takes the disciple of the side of the disciple. No, he's a good boy, just needs a little help or something. The temple president's ready to kill him or throw him on the street, but the spiritual master says, no, he's a good boy, give him another chance. So Balaram was affectionate toward Duryodhana. Duryodhana approached him, please, will you be my guru? Yes, all right. And Balaram was disgusted also that Bhima has unfairly defeated Duryodhana in the club fighting at the end. Okay, something else? Thank you for that, Ekendra Prabhu. I wonder what other topics or questions there might be finding their way into tonight's meeting. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Now we're in the Damodar month, Damodar Leela, and appreciating Krishna's pastimes as a baby and his stealing butter and getting caught. These are wrong. Another side of Krishna's relish of obedience. Yes,
Maharaj, do you have a memory of Prabhupada instituting Damodarastaka and Kartik observance in ISKCON?
just that he said we should do it. I don't remember anything particular. We weren't doing it, and then he said we should do it. Trying to think if there was anything particular. No, I don't remember anything particular. He wasn't in New York at the time, that I know. Probably when I was in Boston, maybe 1969 or so. Did Prabhupada introduce the Damodarashtakam? Yes, he did. Our Chaitanya Prabhu may have introduced it, actually. I'm trying to remember who was first, but he included it in the original Vaishnava songbook, Songs of the Vaishnava Acharyas, and provided the, whoever's unmuted, Krishna Arjun, could you please mute there? Alt A, there you go. Nope, now, yes. Achyutananda Prabhu provided the lyrics and gave the translation of Damodarashtakam. Very sweet translation, actually. I hear sometimes these days more proper, accurate translations, truer to the Sanskrit, but there's a very nice quality to Achyutananda Prabhu's translation. It sort of captures the essence of things. So it may be that Srila Prabhupada, after those came out, told us to do it, but I forget. It would have been more or less around the same time, but I don't really remember. I heard a nice explanation of why this month is called the month of Radharani, Tina says, even though there seemed to be no relationship to her and the Leela. It would seem like it should be the month of Mother Yashoda. Could you expand on why this is the month of Radharani and what that really means for us? No, I couldn't. I've never heard that this is the month of Radharani. The month is known as Damodar. Damodar means the person who's tied up around the waist. So Damodar month. Here's what I found. Oh, be quiet. I don't want to hear what you found. Of course, all the months belong to Srimati Radharani, but I've never heard that this was the month of Radharani. It's nowhere. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj Dandavats. I wrote it really quickly and I'm not explaining it properly. But this question came up in relation to your lovely disciple Kadanda Karna Maharaj last night at Bhakti Center said how Kartik is like the mood of Radharani. Like I'm not saying like the month of Radharani, and that's where I had the question: what's her relationship? Because this is Damodar, which is the belly and the rope, and the Leela was with Mother Yashoda, who was like the butter. And so, what's the significance? And I was able to ask Hari Parsha Prabhu this morning, and his actually, and I can share his explanation is actually that this Leela happened in the spiritual world with Radharani. They were like supposed to meet for a date, like in the forest, and Krishna was late, so Radharani was very mad at him. So she took a rope and tied him around the tree, and that's a Leela. And I might be getting some of the details wrong, but essentially as further he said, I'm going to repeat this in my Leelas, down here, but with Mother Yashoda. And so that's why it's really called, if someone can help me, I don't know if it's like for the month of Radharani, like the month of Radharani, like the mood, just like we have the leap month is like Krishna's month kind of, and this is like the month for Radharani. And so that was the explanation, but I was just curious if there was just more around that. And, sound from Maharaja's lecture last night, really kind of maybe embodying the mood. I don't know if anyone else caught the lecture last night, or if anything that I'm saying is making sense.
Well, this is all news to me. Of course, I can go upstairs and ask Maharaj about it, or ask him tomorrow. And Hari Parsha Prabhu is a very reliable devotee scholar, so I trust that what he says is upheld by Shastra. But I've never heard this about Radharani's month and Krishna's month. Prabhupada, as far as I know, never said anything about it, so I'm in the dark about it. Okay? In other words, I'm ignorant, can't say anything about it. Sorry. If anyone else knows anything, you're welcome, but Prabhupada never talked about that.
I think Apurva knew something.
Purva, Prabhu, did you have something?
Yes, I did. I'm sure you've heard this statement, you can judge a thing by its results. Can you elaborate on that and tell us where it's from and how we can apply that in understanding how to judge and gauge our own devotional service and the dynamics of that statement?
Which statement do you mean? I got lost there for a moment.
You can judge a thing by its results.
In
other words, where does that come from? And
Prabhupada, of course, said it. You can judge a thing by the result, and he quoted a Sanskrit aphorism, which is roughly palena pariciyate, which means you can tell the thing by the result. It's sort of proverbial knowledge, if things like it's proverbial knowledge. If the result is good, then the process must be worth it, must be worthwhile. I don't know exactly what more to say about it. The Prabhupada negatively applied it to sex. If the process is so good, why are they trying to stop the result? Pregnancy. So they think that sex is very good, but then if the process is good, why are they trying to kill the result? Otherwise, process and result, I'm trying to think if there's something else. Nothing else comes to mind relevant to that.
okay.
Okay. Anything? Okay, let's see. There's some stuff here in the chat box. Let me expand the chat box so I can see what it is. Sankarshan asks, did Prabhupada have much to say about following Chaturmasya? I've noticed with the passing of time that temples and devotees tend to neglect fasting from prescribed items during those 4 months. In the 80s, it was a given to follow those restrictions. Yes, Prabhupada introduced them. He didn't make a big deal of it, as it were, but he just said that we should do it. And then from then on, we did it. He made it simple. Sometimes in Bengal, particularly, there's sort of quite particular about sort of esoteric items, you might think, or items that, like on Ekadasi, no grains and beans, but then you find out mustard seeds and other things. Prabhupada made it pretty simple. It was no grains and beans for Ekadasi, and then for Chaturmasya, 1 month, no milk, 1 month, no leafy green vegetables, 1 month, no yogurt, 1 month, no urd dal, and that's it. And the real purpose is to increase our remembrance of Krishna. That's what Prabhupada most wanted. It wasn't about the particular fast or this or that, but that for this month, we should increase our hearing and chanting, increase our remembrance of Krishna. But he did give us that 4-month fasting. It's not very difficult unless you're South Indian, then the urd dal fast is severe. Anything else about that? Oh, and one other thing. Sometimes we saw that devotees would get very tapasya oriented, and they would grow their beards, not shave and so on. And Prabhupada didn't much approve of that. He called it chaturmes. Instead of chaturmasya, he'd say chaturmes. And then he'd say that, if you're actually going to follow, then there are these very strict rules for following chaturmasya. You only eat once a day and only plain khichdi, and there are all sorts of like austerities. But he saw that his disciples liked that austerity only to grow their beards, which of course the Prabhupada meant basically hippie seeds. So he didn't much appreciate that. Although I remember one year Bhavananda Maharaj at the time was quite strictly following Chaturmasya, and Srila Prabhupada approved. Anything else? Prabhin provides a quote, moving back to Duryodhana. This is from 3rd canto, 3.3.13. Duryodhana was bereft of his fortune and duration of life because of the intricacy of ill advice given by Karna, Dushashan, and Sobala, which is Shakuni. When he lay on the ground with his followers, his thighs broken, although he was powerful, the Lord, Krishna, was not happy to see the scene. Okay. And Tina has given links for this topics about Srimati Radharani. Tulsi Priya says, I won't mention any names, but one senior devotee who was close to Prabhupada said he didn't observe Chaturmasya Vrata. Oh, that Prabhupada didn't observe Chaturmasya Vrata. What should we refer to show that Prabhupada wanted us to observe the fast? Of course, Prabhupada didn't have to follow anything. I suppose one would have to refer to folio and do a search on these things.
Like a CC purport.
There's a CC purport, right? Okay. But apart from the CC purport, before we were following Chaturmasya, I believe before the CC came out. And so there may be a letter or something like that. But as stated earlier by Sankarshan, in the 80s, 70s, we all knew this. It was standard. And it wasn't something that someone found by research and said, oh, in the Shastra, but Prabhupada gave it to us. Okay. Yes, Mukunda Charan.
I was wondering at one point about the Palena Parichiyate, in some cases, and specifically the one that comes to mind now is with that roadshow Yoga Village example. It seemed that there were good results, and that case Prabhupada said, because the thing isn't good, don't do it. It's kind of like you'll judge the thing or the results by the thing. You're saying even though you're making devotees, they won't last.
Yeah.
Which seems
Sometimes judging by the results may not be the way to go. Mukunda Charan references the Radha Damodar Roadshow, which at first Prabhupada appreciated. They were doing a rock opera and kirtan with electric instruments and other such things. And at first Prabhupada appreciated it, but later he shut it down and said that it was, what did he say? Essentially deviating and another change, every day another change. Stop all this nonsense, just chant Hare Krishna. No yoga village or rock opera. Even though, yes, it was making devotees. The other thing it was doing, of course, is that devotees were on the party were observed not to be following very strictly the routine of sadhana and so on. I'm a little reluctant to, say why Prabhupada did A or B or C, but if you read his letter on letters, plural, on the topic, he considered it to be going too far away from the standard. So they should, just speak Srimad Bhagavatam, chant Hare Krishna. That's where the potency is. There's no need of these sort of flim-flam things. And as you said, he said they'll make devotees, but they'll be of a sentimental character and they won't stick. I've seen this process from this mantra misused also. I'm getting great results, so I must be right. Where devotees were doing things that were very, very wrong, but because they were getting money or they were in some way getting some big result, then they figured they must be, or they advertised, promoted that they must be on the right track. And sometimes you don't see the results till later, what the real results were. We've seen times in ISKCON where people were doing, Sankirtan turned into just merchandise business, and the results were great in terms of income, but the devotees fell apart basically because they weren't doing work that was spiritually nourishing. They weren't preaching about Krishna. They were just became salesmen. And therefore, even though it appeared that there was some good result, the result was essentially illusory. So just, I must be doing it right because I'm getting the good result. May not always be a reliable indicator. Something else? Oh, Tulsi Priya's hand. Well, wait a second. Tina says, regarding Prabhin's comment about Duryodhana, that's interesting. As the depiction of the relationship with Duryodhana and the rest of those names is the flip in Krishnadasa's rendition. Duryodhana influenced Karna, thus why we use Karna as an example of having poor association. Dushasana was the younger brother of Duryodhana and followed his older brother and Shobala. They were all bad association for one another, but Shakuni particularly was very devious-minded, and Karna also had his character faults, and Duryodhana we know. So they were all reinforcing one another in their evil doings. And Dhritarashtra also, who was scheming how somehow to keep the throne. So he was also influencing Duryodhana, or influenced by, they were all cumulative bad association. Saraswati.
Maharaj, I just wanted to follow up on that because, you hear about Mother Gandhari, Dhritarashtra's Sati wife, and you know that she knew, she was completely aware of how especially Duryodhana, how evil he was, all his activities. She was never approving of it, but yet towards the end, you find that attachment that she had for Duryodhana, she wasn't really able to give it up, because she made him, like, his body into metal. When he was ready to fight with Bhima, she gave that last boon to him. So I'm just thinking, Maya is so strong. You could be like so strong in your tapasya, austerity, but there's that attachment even for a undeserving child as Duryodhana, but yet that attachment, you can't let go of it as a mother.
Yeah. Good observation. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. Tulsi Priya.
Hi, Krishna Maharaj, obeisances. I was just thinking, when you were talking about sentimental, people of a sentimental caliber, for some reason it popped into my head. I used to occasionally watch Andy Stanley's sermons, and he was kind of alluding to that, to sentimentality, and in his congregation, he was saying sometimes, people would be at a service and they would say, "Did you feel the spirit? Did you feel the spirit?" And he would sort of say conspiratorially, he says, "It wasn't the spirit, it was the music." And, so, the implication that the music is so good, and, it has an emotional impact, and so carries people along, and they think that they're, feeling the spirit of God. And I was just wondering, with your, in the Kirtan book, your Kirtan standards book, if you address anything like that, because sometimes I feel like we have very, very, very good Kirtan leaders, and we have also devotees who may not be in that sort of performative level of Kirtan, but they also are very good Kirtan leaders. And how, is there any scope for distinguishing when something is good from a musical performance perspective, and when something is really, somebody's being a via medium and a channel for, for the holy name? I don't know if that question makes any sense, but.
Well, it rambled a bit, but I get it. Yes, there is, just I do talk about that. Not so much talk about it as quote Prabhupada about that. Prabhupada in several places emphasizes that it's the purity of the chanting that attracts people. It's not musical proficiency. If someone is, Prabhupada appreciated those who are expert singers or expert musicians. Vishnu Jan comes to mind, and Bhardraj is another one. Prabhupada appreciated, but the main thing Prabhupada said is the devotional feeling. He said we're not professional musicians, and he didn't urge us to go out and become professionally expert. Although, again, in the forward to the songs of the Vaishnava Acharyas, Prabhupada appreciated how Achyutananda had become like a professional expert in playing Mridanga. So sometimes he appreciated it, but his emphasis was always on the purity of the chanting. That's sort of the long and the short of it. I could dig out the quotes for you, and that they are informative or enlightening. But that's the main point, is that it's not a musical performance. It's a devotional offering to Krishna. And Prabhupada said that. He said, we're not trying to please the crowd. We want to please Krishna. If Krishna is pleased, then everyone will be pleased. If you pour water on the root of the tree, then the water will be distributed to the branches and leaves. So if we please Krishna, then everyone will be pleased. And if we don't please Krishna, what's the use? Those are some of the points that Prabhupada makes. So yes, that I do come to that in the standards book.
If I could follow up on that, I guess my question is more from dealing with the receiving end. In other words, people may attend a very powerful kirtan performance and they're feeling like they're having a spiritual experience. That's why I was alluding to Andy Stanley, whereas maybe their experience is more, of the emotional impact of a good performance. How
well, whatever, if they come and sit for the kirtan, and if the kirtan is being done by pure devotees, then they'll come to the standard. They may have come because they heard it was good music, or because they're interested in meditation, or because they got an invitation from a really nice girl. But whatever reason they came, if they go on hearing the holy name of Krishna, then they'll be purified. Then they'll be purified. So let them come one way or another way, but let them hear the holy name and become purified.
Thank you.
Now there's some chat box messages. Let's see. Praveen followed up about Duryodhana. This is from purport. The Lord is constrained to award punishment upon the wrongdoer, but he's not happy to award such punishments because the living entities are originally his parts and parcels. So reluctantly, the Lord punishes the evildoers. Venkatesh. We see people applying principles of spiritual life and giving up sinful life, finding happiness in higher activities. In this case, it may be said that they have attained a higher taste. But what if it is told that someone who's following spiritual principles gives it up and goes on the path of sinful life? What if this is quoted as this is also a case of going after higher taste? How are these two cases different? Well, they're both a case of changing from one taste to another. But even the person with the person who attains the higher taste generally forgets about the lower taste. Rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. He gets the higher taste and forgets the lower taste. But a person who gets the lower taste after having the higher taste, if he falls down, still he can't give up thinking about that higher taste. But there was something higher. It was very nice. That's mentioned in first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam by Narad Muni, that even if, because of being immature, one who is taken to Krishna consciousness falls down, there's no loss for him. And he goes on remembering again and again. So gradually, what was that Kshipram Bhavati Dharmatma, he comes back to the point. Also, it may seem, well, it's just a change of taste from one to another, but an objective observer will see the difference between the taste of halava and the taste of garbage. It's not just that because, well, it's a change from one taste to another, what's the difference? But an intelligent person will see that one is higher and one is lower. Something else? Krishna, 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 Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, Rakshama. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Chaktva, yes, Praveen's got the verse. Chaktva Sudharmam Charanam Pujam Harer. bhajan apakvota patetato yadi yatra kvavabhadram abhudam shakim ko varta apto abhajatam sadharmata. Even if one gives up one's prescribed duties to surrender to the lotus feet of Krishna and render service, if because of being apakva means immature, he falls, apakvota patate tato yadi, yatra kva vabhadram, what kind of loss is there for him? What misfortune is there? Yatra kvavabhadram abhuda mushakim ko varta apta abhajatam sutta. And even if one performs his duties very nicely, if he's not Krishna conscious, what is the use? What is the use? And then I think it may be the next verse where it's said that he can't go on, he can't forget that taste that he's gotten of the nectar of the lotus feet of Krishna, even if for some time he goes away, he can't give it up. It will come back sooner or later. Anything else?
Yeah,
Well, what about,
I got one.
you have one?
Purity is the force. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah,
And
of
how-
course, purity is the force. First thing, of course, is that this set of sayings, purity is the force and books are the base, didn't actually come from Prabhupada. It was in some Chinese writing. But it was read to Prabhupada and Prabhupada said, And devotees have picked it up as faithfully representing principles that Srila Prabhupada taught us. So purity is the force that Prabhupada did teach us. That, for example, in the kirtan, it's not your musical expertise, although that may be welcome. It's the purity of devotional service. That's what attracts people. One may not be a great scholar, or he may not be a great musician, or a great this or that, but people will appreciate the force of purity, pure devotional service. Or looking at it from another point of view, what is that? That jnana karmadya navratam. Pure means there's nothing mixed in. The things that are mixed in retard devotional service. Jnana, karma, yoga siddhis, all of these things, attraction to those things holds us back. It reduces the force. Full force is pure devotional service, not mixed devotional service, adulterated devotional service. So if we want to get the full force of devotional service, then we should come to the point of purity. Therefore, no gambling, no intoxicants, no meat eating, no illicit sex, and kirtaniya sadhari, constant chanting. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Should we end up with a little kirtan? Can we tap Pancha Tattva Prabhu again?
I think he's driving.
Oh, he's driving, huh?
No, he isn't. Oh, is he?
I don't know. I only get a little postage stamp picture.
Can I get a signal here? Does anybody hear me?
Now we do.
Okay, let me pull off.
He said it would pull off.
Oh, okay.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. Thank you so much, Pancha Tattva Prabhu from the Sankirtan Van.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you.
Hare Krishna
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna. Hari Bo.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hari Bo.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you. Hare Krishna.